this is when we get a chance to just kind of be able to discuss kind of off the cuff what we think is happening in this space. And, Steve, I want you to give just a little tiny bit of your background so that they understand your wealth of experience.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure, Kathryn, to catch up with you. 25 years in automotive, mostly working in marketplaces, wholesale B2B used vehicle marketplaces, and then consumer-facing advertising marketplaces like Auto Trader and then TrueCar. And then more recently, as of 3.5 years ago, I find myself at this point in my career investing in early stage companies, mobility and automotive tech companies. And we've made 26 investments over the last 3 years. And it's a really exciting time. We're trying to benefit from all of these trends that are morphing and changing the industry.
And it helps to have, I'm an entrepreneur, as you know. We were just talking.
You are indeed.
That. And I have to say, to me, my favorite people are investors, because they're the ones that have the vision of helping you, and so I'm really glad that it's going well. Certainly a space that needs it, automotive. And then you and I have gotten to be very lively discussing about this unique space within automotive, the commercial vehicle business space, right? And so you gave me 3 things that we were going to talk about, kind of around, how you are seeing today, right? What the opportunity for commercial really is. And so I just thought I've laid them out in 3 slides, and we'll just talk about them a little bit. I remember the day when you sent me, or I saw in your weekly and monthly newsletter, which I recommend everybody to search for that, Automotive Ventures, and sign up for it. But that you had a diagram of a dealership's office and showed all the different things. And I sent it back and said, "Where's commercial?"
Right.
That was a while ago. And since then, I think you're seeing it too, right?
Yeah, I think that just practically, there's a lot of change coming to franchise dealers, and while they've been more profitable than ever the last 3 years through COVID, now they're starting to come back down to earth from a profitability standpoint, and saying, "Hey, some of these trends may impact me negatively from a profitability standpoint, be it either the automakers owning more of the consumer experience and selling directly, whether it's EVs having longer service intervals." So individual EVs might not come into the service space as often, so I might not be as busy. And a good way to sort of like spread your bets, diversify, and hedge is to embrace commercial. Commercial, as you know, Kathryn, better than anyone, is a great profitable business line that more and more franchise dealers are investing in and embracing. And I think that the dealers that have been on the forefront of that have been very, very successful.
And I love how it's really about the community. And that's why I picked these photos to represent it, is that, dealers, when I came into the industry, the dealer industry back in 2012, I really didn't understand, but dealerships are really kind of a backbone of a community. That's how they, how they see themselves. That's how they try to behave. And when you think about it, the small and medium businesses are really the ones that drive that economy. So it's a win-win for everybody to start focusing on that.
Yeah, and those communities also, is a captive base of customers, small, medium businesses that need commercial vehicles. Then it's a flywheel effect where they go to the dealer to fulfill their needs for commercial vehicles, whether new or used.
Yeah, in fact, I won't say the OEM, but I had some data a while ago that where they did research, and they saw that for every medium duty truck that was bought, that same entity or group bought 7 other vehicles, and that could be
Wow.
personal vehicles, from the owners or from the employees or whatever. It doesn't have to be more business vehicles, right? So. Yeah, I think I appreciate that this is something that you've recognized and that you see it across the whole space. And I love that you noticed this too, right? Because this was a press release out, a couple weeks ago or maybe a month ago?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and we've seen the success that Ford's had with their commercial division, And, in this environment where the EV divisions of these legacy automakers are not profitable and may not be profitable anytime soon, thank goodness they've got these profitable commercial divisions. And I think Stellantis realizes that too. And they're formalizing the structure around their commercial division.
And somewhere in between some Ford Pro announcements and this, General Motors re-envisioned their commercial group and launched it as GM Envolve, with this concept around it's not just helping the businesses with their vehicles, it's all the other services that the OEM has taken an involvement with, around telematics, around fleet management, gas cards, charging, all these different things that they want to be a partner with the dealer in that relationship with the customers.
Yep, exactly right. Yeah, I would say more so than we felt historically. There's always been this interesting tension between franchise dealers and their automakers, but on the commercial side, there seems to be much more collaboration.
I think the tension is still there too, but I think what's happened is, honestly, is that the OEMs saw, like you said, they saw the success, but they also saw what happened during the pandemic. And, our comment about it's recession proof, what I had heard, and I'm not going to say which OEM, they never did anything about commercial because it was just so steady. They didn't have to. Well, that's kind of a silly approach to any steady business. What you want to do is you want to fuel it. You want to lean into it. You want to make more things happen if it's a good place to be. And I think that's what we're seeing, is that they're saying, well, what else could we do for them? How else could we make them? And, one of the things I pointed out earlier today was commercial buyers are 5 times more loyal. And I think you've seen brand loyalty has really changed a lot.
Yeah, 100%, especially in this day and age of EVs where there's more options. And also I think on the passenger vehicle side, it's more commoditized now. Right. But on the commercial side, like you said, I mean, much more loyalty than you would experience on the passenger side.
Well, I love the technology group with the panel was just before this. And so I know they were talking about ways that dealers and their customers can be more efficient, and what are the kinds of things that have been happening around, being more able to do things online. And this was something that we did as a result of the lack of inventory. And I'm sure you saw what happened starting in 21, right?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly right. I mean, kudos to you to always be ahead of these changes and helping push the industry forward. But I mean, surfacing better data for the consumer, but also for the dealer's benefit, has been transformational in terms of the commercial space. And Work Truck Solutions has been on the bleeding edge of that, pushing that forward.
Yeah. It's been challenging for sure. That push me pull you of technology and the commercial space when I started back in 2007 was very generational. I'll just put it that way. It seems like the politest way to say it. And very technology resistant. And so it takes time. One of the words that has come up a lot over the last 2 days is the word trust. This how do you help people transition to anything new? Like whether it's going from, not knowing how to even use email, which is I experienced, but, or to go to electric vehicles. It's there's this whole, kind of trust aspect that especially businesses need to have, because it's so foundational to their day-to-day and what they need to accomplish.
Which probably comes back to your point about loyalty, right? I mean, if the dealer can establish trust and be a genuinely trusted partner with a small, medium business around whatever their commercial needs are, it probably doesn't engender trust that pays dividends down the road.
Yeah. Well, again, I appreciate that you identified these. I thought they were definitely things that we've been focused on. And so now we get to the really fun part. All right. Oops. Actually, I forgot. I had some other examples of this here. Build to order, van builder, all sorts of things that you can kind of do. All right. Now let's talk about fun stuff. You are
Mhm.
probably the person that I know personally that has the most high level view, 360 view, engaged view around all things mobility.
Right.
And so last week I was in Las Vegas at what was called Delivery Con. So it was
Hmm.
produced by Bobbitt. And I was on a panel with Matthew Doss, who was the guy that he used to be in charge of the New York Medallion.
Oh,
Uh,
sure. Wow.
he's the head of the Transport Regulation Association. I forget.
Transit Authority, maybe.
Yeah,
Yep.
and the national one, and then the other guy, Bill, was with eBliss, which is a electric bike, and we were talking about, especially in urban spaces, right? All the challenges of things like the fight for the curb.
Yep.
It was very stimulating to me because it was a viewpoint that I hadn't really had before. And it made me go, okay, now I think commercial vehicles really needs to be thinking outside of the box on what it really is. So what do you know? Because I know you know a lot.
Well, I mean, I don't know that I know any more than you, but this interesting movement towards what they're calling like a 15-minute city, trying to get inhabitants to live in the city and walk to the grocery store and walk to parks, et cetera, is very, very, very interesting. And I know there's been a little bit of a political backlash, but you look at what's going on in cities such as San Francisco, we need to make positive efforts to getting people to live in these cities, look after these cities, et cetera. And I think part of that's going to be the dedicated lanes you could for bikes, and I think you're going to see them in some cases block off streets entirely for pedestrians and smaller vehicles, electric vehicles and manual vehicles. And I think like you've got these illustrations here. I mean, the commercial space needs to get redefined as well. The way we're going to deliver packages in the future, deliver goods, deliver services to people's work or home has to accommodate these changes that are going on. And then you've also got to move obviously towards decarbonization,
Right.
moving away from internal combustion vehicles to electric vehicles allowed us to open up these new like smaller either two-wheel or four-wheel vehicles. The confluence of the two is going to be very interesting to see where we end up and whether, as you've got here, UPS will move broad scale to more smaller vehicles that are electric, that are more sort of like urban friendly.
Yeah. Are any of your portfolio companies kind of in this space, or have you been looking at any of them?
Yeah, we've looked at a bunch of sort of more what I would call like micro
Right.
mobility investments. We actually made one. I can't divulge it yet. It's not public.
Ah,
They're out of New York City, and it is involved in last mile logistics and delivery. I'll
huh?
be excited when I can share that. We made that investment literally last week. But yeah, we continue to look at that space. It's very competitive in many of the areas. We think we found a nice gem company that's very defensible, but we definitely look at a lot of companies in this space.
I think, like you said, thinking differently, trying to think through. I think we both kind of agree, though, that people aren't going to go back. Consumers don't want to go back to the I'm in charge of getting all my stuff and driving somewhere and getting it and bringing it back, right? I mean, delivery is huge and it's not going away,
Yeah, I mean, I would call that kind of like the quote unquote convenience economy that
right?
accelerated through COVID. But yeah, I mean, on demand everything now, whether it's food or products, and people's expectations really are like either immediate or next day delivery. And there's a big logistical challenges, a lot of which can be alleviated through these smaller vehicles.
Well, let's extend that and say, what are other ways? Because, to be convenient, how many drivers do we need to have driving little vehicles, right? I
Right.
mean, and so in my looking at this, I found, wow, there's a lot that's already going on right now. I personally had been kind of tracking things in the what I would call off-road space. So ag
Mhm.
is one of my favorite
Yep.
categories. Mining, there's areas where autonomous was like a no-brainer. It's like
Yep.
you go from here and you go from here and you're, boop, 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 right? But there's a lot going on in this. What have you seen?
Yeah, I think in terms of like on-road commercial, I think we'll see a few things. There'll be sort of platooning, as they call it. For
Mhm.
long haul routes, you'll have a platoon of multiple large Class 8 vehicles. There might be a driver in the first cab, but not necessarily the others, because they're following. And it's almost like a train, right, driving down the road, and a lot of experimentation and investment going into that area. We've got a lot of like, mid-mile and last mile investment that's going on too. And then, equally interesting is the term teleoperations, where you've got a remote operator who the vehicle might be autonomous, but when it gets confused, as they sometimes do, a human can step in and remotely operate the vehicle as needed. You're seeing some of this pop up in cities like Las Vegas, for example, where you may in the future hop into a taxi where there isn't a driver, but there's a teleoperator that can step in if needed to actually override the controls if the car gets confused.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read a lot of the trials ways and Uber and all of that kind of stuff. And, since I live in California, sadly, I'm just going to say that in passing, watching what happened in San Francisco, where people were messing
Right.
the autonomous vehicles with cones and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, people is our biggest problem, right?
They often are. Yes, they often are.
So, some of the things that have been discussed is actual dedicated roads. I don't know where that is right now. I saw the other day a picture of I know one of my favorites too are roads or parking areas where they charge. The road
Right.
itself charges the
Yep.
vehicle. And of course we all, have charged our phone on some kind of an induction thing, so it's kind of okay, maybe, but I also know that I don't want to live under a transmission tower. So,
Right.
what does that all look like? Anything in that area that you'd like to have fun
Yeah,
with?
the induction thing is very interesting, right? One for just passenger vehicles, you park at home, and rather than plugging in, you may have a pad on your garage floor. And
Mhm.
then obviously, same thing for garbage trucks, school buses, et cetera, that park in the same place every night. They can come back and park and get charged. But more interesting, as you said, is like embedding this induction technology in the roads. So if you
Right.
had dedicated, HOV sort of lanes for heavier vehicles that can charge as they drive, there's a lot of innovation going on right now. It's very expensive, but
Yeah.
you don't need to have that over the entire distance, only for portions. And while that vehicle is over that portion of road, it's actually drawing a charge from something that's embedded under the asphalt or concrete.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Jim brought up today in his Jim Press in his fireside chat today about, compared what's going on right now to being the one standing there watching Orville and Wilbur,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because who would have even been able to imagine
Right.
a 777? Like,
Yep.
who could have even imagined that then?
That's right. Yeah, exactly right.
Well, okay, speaking of flying, this is one that I really have a lot of mental fun with, and I had fun finding these. And oh my God, there's a lot of stuff going on. So, the very first pizza delivery, it was Domino's back in 2016 in New Zealand. They were two pizzas, and one was a peri peri chicken, and the other was cranberry something else. I'm like, okay, cool. And then, of course, Walmart is doing it, and
Yep.
Amazon. And this. What's really funny is I found this, but they literally just had a big press release about their test in College Station, Texas, that they're
Mhm.
doing, where they're guaranteeing a 2-hour delivery for any kind of pharmaceuticals. It's really interesting.
Yeah, very much so. For small packages, this makes a lot of sense intuitively, especially like you said. I mean, if someone needs medication in a very short time frame or is willing to pay for, almost real-time delivery, these things can be dispatched from relatively close locations. They aren't emitting. It'll keep more roads off or trucks off the road. And it's interesting, but both Amazon and Walmart have spent a ton of money in innovation in this space. So this is coming. The biggest challenge is going to be like where the packages get dropped off, because you don't want them just parachuting these things onto your front lawn. So we're going to have to build out safe receptacles for these drones to drop off the packages and then get allocated to the right people, et cetera. But you're going to see much more of this, I think, in the short term.
Yeah, I think, some of the images of, kind of the ideas that I saw early on was like a truck drives out to an area, parks, and 10 drones take off to deliver things, and then they all come back and land on the truck again. I
Right.
remembered that one and I thought, okay, that kind of makes sense, like maybe. I've seen, like we were looking at that little kind of neuro in the last
Yep.
slide, which is
Sure.
delivery one, that there's things like that that go to a place, and there's on the sidewalk, there's like a little set of kind of cubbies,
Right.
lockable cubbies where things get unloaded there and then people come and get it,
Right.
right? And of course, back to your thought around, the 15-minute urban life, people used to do that. They'd walk down to the post office and they'd pick up their mail, and what's wrong with making people go for a 15-minute walk every day? I mean, I think that would be good.
I think so. You have fitter people out there.
Yeah. So it's definitely very, very different, though, based upon whether or not it's urban or rural and, kind of suburban in the middle. Today we heard a lot of different product fuel ideas. So we heard from somebody that, has been in the biofuel and what's been going on there. We heard from yesterday, we heard from somebody with propane gas for use. And,
Mhm.
in the rural areas, some of these make so much sense, and they are, especially propane, it really gets you to a much lower, emissions. Uh, and so I'm just hoping that as we all try to transition, we all recognize that there's many paths to the place that we need to go,
Right.
and that we're not saying, "Oh, this is the only way," because especially in the commercial space, we learn early on that there's so many different use cases. You can't just have one solution, right?
Totally agreed. 100%.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I really want, and you've seen this actually in a couple of presentations when we've been at the same event, that I have this couple of slides here that are kind of like my big picture idea, and it's
Mhm.
this concept that the vehicle life cycle, right? So we talk about new being $170 billion industry, used being $160 billion annually in the commercial space, but and we talked today about it being 80% of our GDP, right? Supports is supported by commercial vehicles. But let's talk a minute about the whole ecosystem, right? So I'm going to bring up my favorite slide, which is this lovely example of
Yep.
all the things that are totally unique when you look at commercial. So
Mhm.
all of these things happen in the automotive space. You've been around them, all of them, your whole life. You've
Yep.
seen them on retail, and as well as anybody else that each one of them is very, very different.
Mhm.
When it comes to a business using a vehicle for their business needs. I mean, we might replace telematics with connected. We might. I mean, it's all the same kind of stuff, but it's different.
Yeah, I mean, each of these you could dig into, and each is its own little ecosystem, right? With
Mhm.
customers and revenue sources and opportunities. But it is amazing laid out this way, just to look at the sort of complexity and interconnectedness of all of this. And if we had to go spend time on any of these to say, what does the future look like, and or where is there opportunity for entrepreneurs to be innovating, we could dig in and identify opportunities. But I think if nothing else, it just expresses one, just the sheer magnitude of the opportunity with $1.8 trillion, but also just the fact that it's exciting. There needs to be a lot of innovation across every single facet of the commercial space.
Right. I would say today we're probably getting the most innovation, definitely telematics has been a big deal, right? But just like a lot of other things, data doesn't help you if you have wads of it and you don't know what to do with it, if you don't
Mhm.
have some kind of actionable activity. And so, fleet management is really kind of this concept of how do we take some of this data and do we make it, actionable? So it used to be that, big fleet management companies and big fleets, right? That's it. But now with the some new technologies, the OEMs are pushing dealers to get involved locally with SMB, small to medium businesses, on how to help them, how to take the technologies that have been tested, the telematics that maybe they could get, but they wouldn't know what to do with it, and turn it into planning. And that was probably one of the things out of the last couple of days that was very much front and center. It's like you got to start planning things. You got to start looking, thinking that way, because this industry has been, I'll just show up at the dealer lot and hope that there is a truck that matches my needs. And if
Mhm.
not, I'll take something that matches 70% of it,
Right.
and it just that's not tenable anymore. They've gone up in pricing. You can't believe, because these are expensive vehicles to begin with. They've gone up 12 to $15,000 a piece,
Wow.
and so you have to get better at all of this. And even some of the things around, OEMs are looking at trying to maybe simplify and standardize some of their, but the upfits aren't going to be. They're going to be even more specialized for the use case, because that's where you get the benefit,
Yep.
the efficiencies.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. I think we're just scratching the surface now. As these vehicles come online and are more equipped with sensors, we should be able to help, ensure the driver is aware and drowsy and paying attention, which should lower insurance costs overall and help with some of the labor issues. Route optimization, to make sure that we're more efficient with capacity utilization, et cetera, and that the owners of these fleet units are making more money than they are before because of capacity utilization. And then you think of just what we've just started to do with predictive analytics, right? Anticipating when key components on the vehicle need to be repaired or
Yes,
replaced, and getting ahead of that, because downtime is money.
that's
And
right.
the fleet owner can't afford to have any downtime. And the vehicles now are smarter and better equipped to ensure we're going to be able to minimize downtime.
Absolutely. Well, as always, I really appreciate you being here to help me wrap up and think about, kind of the fun, exciting things, because you got to think about that when you turn around and there's all that work to do, right?
Yeah. Well, Kathryn, as always, it's really great to catch up, and thank you for having me on today.